Hello, welcome to Wellness and Wisdom with Dr. Nadu Tuakli, the podcast dedicated to empowering women over 40 to age gracefully, competently, and beautifully. I'm Dr. Nadu Tuakli, a family doctor, preventive medicine specialist, author, teacher, mother, and expert in hormone replacement, anti-aging, and longevity. With decades of experience as a physician and as a woman embracing every stage of life, I'm here to share practical advice, expert insights, and inspiring stories to help you thrive in happiness, health, and appearance. Together with my guests, we'll explore topics that matter most to you, from navigating perimenopause and optimizing your health to redefining success in retirement and beyond. Let's celebrate the aging process with vitality and purpose, because your best years are still ahead. Subscribe now to add more life to your years and step into the best version of yourself. I'm excited. Welcome to Wellness and Wisdom with Dr. Nadu Tuakli, where I have conversations with extraordinary women who are making an impact on all aspects of life. The US is so youth-centered that you watch the TV for 4 hours and never see a mature woman unless she's playing someone's mother. But I believe that mature women still have so much to share: vitality, wisdom, and joy. And my guest today is a shining example of that. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with a powerhouse vocalist who's had an illustrious career spanning over 4 decades, and she's still going strong. I had the chance to see her in London last summer, and wow, she sang for 2 hours straight, radiating energy and passion. She's living proof that age is just a number. Now, how's this for roll call? Sir Elton John, Annie Lennox, Bill Wyman of the Rolling Stones, Chaka Khan, Tina Turner, Sting, Mary Wilson, Eric Clapton, and my favorite Beatle, George Harrison, Barry White, and many, many more. Plus, she has several solo albums of her own. Beyond the concert stage, my guest's voice has been featured in films like Evita, starring Madonna, Beloved with Oprah Winfrey, and The Hitman's Bodyguard, featuring Samuel L. Jackson and Ryan Reynolds. My guest today is the incredible Beverley Skeete, a woman whose voice has touched millions, whether they know it or not. And today we're going to dive deep into her life, her career, and the secrets behind her energy and longevity. Welcome to the podcast, Beverley.
Hi, happy to be here.
I have so many questions for you today.
Oh, great. Fire away.
Before we get into your incredible music career, let's talk about your personal life. So you're married to a musician. You have 2 kids, both female vocalists, and a grandbaby.
Yes, indeed.
And how long have you been married?
We've been married for over 20 years, but we've actually been together for 34.
And so how have you balanced family life with such a demanding career? I think many musicians struggle with the demands of touring and family. How did you navigate raising kids while performing around the world?
Well, I believe that us women have to help each other because we cannot do it alone. There's some people that are forced to, and it's a really tough road. But for me, I lived in a place where I bought a small 2-bedroom house I moved into. I had neighbors on each side, luckily with kids the same age, all girls, and also my dad, who hadn't quite retired yet, so he would help. So he would take my children on holiday during holiday time. Well, the eldest one, holiday to begin with, during holiday time. That was a great help. And sometimes they even went to work with me when I had studio work. The eldest one, she'd be on my back in a little papoose, and she'd be sleeping while I'd be at the mic. You just find a way to do it, because if you want children, they have to factor into your life, and that's all there is to it.
Right. Do you and your family have a favorite retreat spot, or does it change since you've already been everywhere?
To be honest, my dad, before he died, his favourite, I mean, he'd been to America several times because I had siblings in America. And so he would constantly be backwards and forwards or in Barbados. Those are his two destinations, and he never strayed away from those destinations. For me and my husband, it's a bit more difficult because we travel so much. I have to be honest and say we do family holidays, but we tend to, especially now the kids are grown up and all doing the same business, we tend to be at home when we're not working, because traveling has become such a pain in the neck as well, that when we're at home, it's like, do we really want to go away on holiday? And
So
no.
it's a staycation.
A lot of the time it's a staycation. The last few Christmases of my dad's life, we decided that I didn't want to, because I do a lot of the cooking, and I decided I just didn't want my Christmas to be like that. So the last two Christmases, we went to places outside London. We went to one particular place, I think it was near Leicester. We took him there. It was like a manor house, and he loved it. So we went back the following year, the whole family, and that was great. Didn't have to do any cooking, washing up, that was lovely. But apart from that, really, we do, because as you rightfully said, we've been all over the world, me and the girls and my husband. And, thinking of a vacation elsewhere is a lot.
Right. Now that your children are vocalists themselves, how does it feel watching them following in your footsteps? Does it bring back memories of your own early days?
No, because their journey is so much different from mine. The music business has changed. Mm-hmm. So I was just so very fortunate. I had a deal. I was a young girl with a big voice, but record companies here just didn't know what to do with me because most of the soul voices came from America. And the productions in America, they were very versed in doing, because they've been doing it for, years and years and years. And here in England, they were very well prepared for pop. This is what they excelled at. America wasn't as great at the pop thing as England was, and that's how the Beatles became so famous, and the Stones, and because England was great at pop. But what it wasn't great at was soul. And so every time they would pick up somebody like me and think, oh, she's got a great voice. Okay, what do we do with her now? We don't know what kind of music to give to her, and we can't produce it in the same way. And so what happened to me was, then I had this deal, excitement. They didn't know what to do with me. So it got shelved. As a young girl, I was devastated, but I was signed to a record company with lots of other famous people. And they started saying, we love you. We would all be round the corner listening to what you're doing. Will you come on the road with me? Will you come and tour with me? So I started doing that. And then I thought, you know what? This is a great life.
Not so bad, huh?
Yeah, well, because while we'd go to these places, they'd be up at 6 o'clock doing breakfast news or USA Today, America Today, and Good Morning America. And of course, I'd still be in bed. Not going to see them till sound check for the gig later on in the evening. And then we'd get to some place, I'd have a day off and I'd think, oh, must do a little shopping today. Of course, they couldn't do that because they'd be surrounded by people. So I thought, I've got the best of
both worlds.
Yeah. So I started to appreciate and enjoy my position.
Now, did you have a defining big break moment?
In 1998, I did a house record for a record company who just said, listen, your voice would suit this. It was a one-off, but they said, we'd love you to do this, to vocal this. And, so I said yes. Thought nothing of it, got paid. Thought, great, okay, probably never hear about that again. And then I got a panicked phone call saying, it's gone straight into the charts at number 5. You've got to come and do Top of the Pops, which at that time was the most prestigious music program in the whole of the UK. So yeah, that set me on another path to a solo career, because up until then, I was doing backing vocals, traveling the world with different people and doing what I love, but not featuring me.
Right.
I was fine with that. I had done several other things, house records and things which hadn't done anything. When this happened, it was like, well, it's a bonus. People started recognizing me. It took on a different sort of hue, you know. So
Now, was
yeah,
that passion?
that was passion, yeah. So that was great. And then, but out of that came something else. I got asked to work with Bill Wyman, from the bass player, from the ex-bass player from the Rolling Stones, to be the only female vocalist in his all-star band. And his all-star band, wait for it, Peter Frampton,
Oh,
Gary Brooker from Procol Harum, Whiter Shade of Pale, Georgie Fame, Albert Lee, someone who's America will know because he's worked with the Everly Brothers, Dolly Parton, you name it. He's Linda Ronstadt, you name them, he's worked with them. He's a country guitarist. And so that was the band. And when they asked me to join as the only female, I was like, are you sure? And said, yeah. I was working with Elton John on an album, and the engineer said, Bill Wyman wants somebody who can sing lead and who, you know, is confident and who can slot into the band, but couldn't be somebody who's known but not extra super famous, because he wanted to be the one who discovered this talent, you know. And this guy said, well, Stuart said, I know just the woman. I met Stuart as a result of doing the Gap Decor, and that's really what happened to me. So Bill Wyman's Rhythm Kings changed my life completely.
And you were with them for about 18 years,
Yes,
correct?
I was, yeah.
Now, Bill Wyman is in his 80s now. Is he still playing?
Still not playing so much, but he is so prolific. This man, he's written several books. He loves anything that's ancient. He will be the first person that will be on famous dig, you know, where they're digging up ancient artifacts and this and that. He's written so many books about things like that. This man, I can't go on about him enough because he's very underrated. He has documented his own life from the age of about 6. So he has written down in a diary from about 6 his whole life, every single day. When the first book about the Rolling Stones, he was the only one, because in those days, a little bit hazy for obvious reasons with everybody. and they
A little hazy.
little hazy. And they all came to Bill and said, listen, you're the only one that has documented every single thing that happened. I think he was evacuated during the war as well. And so he has documentation of all of that. His first bus ticket.
Wow.
His first library book ticket. Honestly, amazing. He's always writing books about his latest ones, which I didn't even have an interest in this until I started listening to things that, you know, that Bill was interested in. We'd be talking on the coach or, you know, as we were traveling on the train to another gig. And he'd say, oh, I'm writing another book. And I said, what about this time? And he said, door knockers. What? And he said, okay, have you ever been to Chelsea and seen in the Chelsea, all the buildings, which are very old, have got extraordinary, elaborate door knockers.
Door knockers.
With like lions and, you know, elaborate. I'd never noticed that before. But all these things have history. And so we went on to do a history of Chelsea, things that you never even realised with the buildings, because he's interested in old buildings. And he's always writing, and he's still doing music. He's just done an album, just him, an acoustic sort of album. And that's really great. All original stuff that he writes. And he has a style of writing. He just enjoys
Is he 88? Is he 88 now? I can't
about
remember.
88 now, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Still looks great.
So tell us about the glamorous life of a musician.
Oh,
What happens when you wake up in the morning with a cold on the day of a performance?
You wake up in the morning with a cold. On the day of the performance, you panic. You say, if you're the guitarist or the drummer or the musician, then you don't panic quite so much, unless you've got a chest cold and you're really ill. But as a singer, you panic. So your whole raison d'etre is to travel with as many vitamins as possible. I started traveling with things like a little flask that I could put hot water in all the time, constantly, no matter what country. Go to a restaurant and everyone's having coffee and I'll be, can I have some hot water, please? And you start traveling with ginger and honey and, because
And
you
like
have
what
no
I'm taking
drugs.
today.
I think, depending on who you're traveling with as well, most singers are well prepared. The one thing, we're not all alike, but the one thing I never did was I was never a singer who sort of went out and stayed out late on a day off or after the gig, or because I would always be conscious of a tired voice is not a happy voice.
Right.
So I always needed sleep. So I would be the one really boring, say, maybe when we get like a couple of days off, I'll go out somewhere, but not tonight. It can be very boring, but worthwhile the next day when you get up and you've got a voice and you can still cope even though you've got a cold. Then you've done the right thing.
So what's it like being a powerhouse vocalist, but not always having personal name recognition? Are there any benefits to being a little bit incognito in the industry?
I wouldn't say there are benefits and I wouldn't say that there's anything wrong with it. I mean, there are times because when I'm doing my own thing, I can't just leave it at, well, I'm going to do a gig. So, and people will know it's Beverley Skeete, so they'll flock. I've got to put the work in and say, I'm going to be at so-and-so and so-and-so and put the work in. But I don't see that many downsides. I think I've had a really good time and I'm still having a really, really good time. In fact, I'm about to work with Lennox again next week because she's doing some charity stuff and she's doing a live performance at the Albert Hall.
That's Annie Lennox?
Of the Eurythmics, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm about to step back into working with her just for a short period, but I really enjoy that and it takes me away from my hard slog of being me, and then I'm back to being me again. So I still live this dual life of doing both things, and why I'm lucky is because people recognize me for doing the both things. Before it used to be a little bit of she's just a backing singer. And with me, I don't have that. With me, it's, Beverley's doing so-and-so and so-and-so as well as what she does. So I have the best of both worlds. I can't even lie about it.
Now, full transparency, menopause is one of my favorite subjects. So I have to ask, when I saw you perform, I noticed you handling your hot flashes on stage like a pro, waving them away with a very stylish fan. I said, wow, how do you manage that under all those stage lights and makeup? It must get really hot.
In the beginning, oh dear God. I mean, I would have several the flasks, like the people who go jogging. I would have about 4 of those water things on stage and drinking back each one, keeping hydrated. And then I've got a fan to suit every dress. And I still keep a fan in my bag, even though it's not really that bad these days, but at its worst. And I think the first time I saw you, I was having a bit of a time. Again, I could have, I suppose, taken HRT in that, but I just decided, let me see where this goes. If it gets really bad, then, I'll have to do something about it. But as I went along and I learned how to deal with it, and I learned what set it off as well. So I dressed in layers. So if it was getting a bit rough, another layer would come off and another layer would come off. I don't know if I felt like, oh my God, this is getting a bit much for me. I sort of would breathe, drink some water, sort of splash my face with some water and think, okay, calm down. All right. Okay, start again. And to be honest, I found dancing, because I was sweating for real, dancing, not menopausal sweat, because for me, it seemed to be two different things. So
Right.
dancing and expending energy actually seemed to help. I don't know why. It seemed to, the more exercise and the more dancing. So you'll notice that even that I do not keep still on stage ever, because I feel the more mobile, the more I was doing, the better I felt. So
Keep it moving, honey.
keep it moving.
So, speaking of makeup and performances, what's the most challenging part of being on stage for long sets, night after night?
I suppose you do get very tired, and night after night, I think wearing makeup, night after night, your skin starts to feel like, oh my goodness, not again. You know, I mean, during the day, because I'm the kind of person I wear makeup all the time. But
Mhm.
when you're on tour, you start to think, because I used to have this thing about, I don't want anyone to see me looking, not looking my
Yeah.
best. But when those menopause happened as well, and when you're on tour, you start thinking, I don't care. I'm not having one speck of makeup on that coach or on that bus or on that train until I reach that gig,
Right.
because I've got to save my skin, because your skin really does suffer. Can't begin to say how important it is as well as a routine every night. No matter how tired I was, I would take off every single speck of makeup, hydrate, drink water, cleanser, toner, and then creaming up every single sort of little wrinkle and everything, because it's so important. If you want to wear that makeup again the next day, then you got to do it.
Right. Now, how has technology changed the music business? I noticed your band was using iPads and you had a little device in your hand during the show. What's the impact of these tools on live music?
Some for the better, some for the worse. The iPad thing, I don't mind, guys, because it means that I can incorporate a new song. I can say to them, before in the old days, it was a bit more difficult to say, I don't feel like doing this song. If they had made notes or whatever, they're only going to travel with the music that
Right.
you say you're going to do. And if you change your mind, well, that's it. But now with the iPad, I could turn around and say, I don't really feel like doing that one tonight. And they've got all the catalogue of what I do on there, so that they can bring up all the chords and the notes. So that's absolutely fine. The device was I wear in ears sometimes. Not all the time. There's certain times when everything gets a bit much on stage, especially small stages like the 606 where you came.
Hmm.
Because we're all squashed on there. I'm in front of the drum kit and you're getting all that spillage. So what it is, I don't get all of that. I'm getting
Ah,
me, I'm getting you, the ambience from you, but I'm not getting him. And that's technology a good thing. It's not always a great thing, because when you can hear everything so wonderful, sometimes younger singers don't put power into what they're doing, because when you're in the studio and you're singing, and you can hear everything, I don't know, even as someone who doesn't sing, if you can hear everything, you go, and you whisper everything. But when you have to push it, you really have to use your diaphragm and put everything into it. That's why people like Tina, they could belt a song, because
right.
there was no technology, studio technology on stage. So you would just have to, you, the human, were competing with the instruments. You're in competition with the guy who can turn up his guitar. You have nothing to turn up, so you just have to be able to control without losing your voice. So I've learned both things. I've learned how to switch off if the sound isn't good enough. I can take those on and say, okay, let's go old school. And I can belt out. Whereas some younger singers cannot. They have these really small voices where when you hear them live, they have to have backing track and stuff to help them, because live they don't sound the same, whereas I sound the same. So there are pros and cons for every kind of technology.
So you worked with Tina Turner, one
I
of my
did.
idols. I was heartbroken when she passed away, especially knowing that her death was preventable. It was due to prolonged hypertension, which I think a lot of people don't realize.
Oh, really? I
So
didn't
let me
know that.
take this opportunity to remind the listeners, if you have high blood pressure, take your medication. But what was it like working with Tina?
Well, I only did one album. I worked on about 4 songs. And I have a little story that goes with that. Funny enough, I was working with the Eurythmics, about to leave to go on tour for the Greenpeace tour. I got a call during the day before saying, I'm going to be producing Tina Turner, and someone recommended you to do some backing vocals. She's going to be in town. Would you be able to come tomorrow? And I thought, oh my God, I'm kind of working up until 6. And I said, what time? And he said, well, we could kind of push it to starting at 7. Could you get there for 7? And I said, yes, yes, yes.
Absolutely not.
So I said, yes, I can make it. Not even thinking that might not be the case. I wasn't going to give up this opportunity. So off I went the next day to rehearsals, and usually we would finish by about 5:30, 6 o'clock. But this particular day, they wanted to go over some things that didn't sound correct. And I thought it would be today. And I couldn't go and say, oh, I need to leave. Because when you're working with somebody, you have to respect their time. So I was sort of pacing, thinking, looking at my watch, thinking, oh my God, how long is this going to go on? Anyway, I left eventually, and this was before the days of mobile phones, so you couldn't phone and say, I'm on my way. So before I left, I said, I'm just about to leave. And the guy said, how long is it going to take you? And I said, probably about 45 minutes, I lied. And he said, okay. So I got in the
We'll
cab.
wait.
I got there at 8 o'clock, an hour late. When I got there, I was so embarrassed. They were waiting for me. And she was having a cup of coffee. And I said, he showed me, and he said, this is Beverley Skeete, the singer you were waiting for. And she said, honey, I've heard a lot about you. You better be worth it.
Is that Tina?
Yeah. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know whether to say Miss Turner or Tina. So I said, I'm so sorry, Miss Turner. It's going to be fabulous. Myself and the other singer, we were in the room. We're getting on with it, and it's sounding great. And then she came and interrupted and said, may I join you? So she came in with us and did some of the BVs with us, because it obviously must have been sounding great to her. And afterwards, I said to her, was it okay? And she said, you did your thing. And she said, no, seriously, it was great, and thank you. So yeah. And she was really gracious, because some people would have gone, some people would have been so cross, but she was really gracious and really lovely.
So she wasn't really a diva.
I think she probably was a diva when she
At least
needed
to work
be.
with.
I didn't find that. There were times when definitely obviously I can't say I knew her well, because I didn't.
Right.
But what I will say is, I feel from what I saw that there were times when she knew, even when we were doing the vocals, she knew what she wanted.
Right.
And she was firm about what she wanted. And there is a difference between being firm and saying, this is what I want. People sometimes mistake that for being a diva. It's not. It's just a woman being positive and firm about what she wants, and being that person who knows what her music is all about.
Right.
Putting your foot down and
she
saying,
does.
because men do it all the time, but no one calls them a
Right.
diva. They say, this is what I want, blah, 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 and people get on with it. But a woman does it, suddenly she's being a diva, but I don't see it that way.
So what kind of music do you personally listen to when you're not performing?
Blues.
The blues?
I absolutely love blues. I love blues. Well, to be honest, I love a cross-section of music. So I love 70s soul. I love some pop. I love the Beatles. I love the Stones. I love the Who. But at the same time, if you put on Aretha or I don't know if you put on Mahalia Jackson or if you, because my taste varies, or Coco
Right.
Taylor, who's a blues singer, or Etta James. You know,
Right.
I love a variety of singers and music, instrumentals. I just love music, full stop.
Well, let me put in my pet peeve, because all the music that you've talked about actually used to have lyrics. And the music now is like one line repeated over and over and over with no lyrics. You know what I mean?
Well, do you know what? As an older singer, you get to understand and realize what's happening. Record companies are responsible for that, not the artists. Many artists come to a record company or they're putting out product all the time. Great songs with lyrics, they don't get picked up. The record
Mm,
company will say, this is going to make us money. It's a no-brainer. The audience can sing it by the time they leave the auditorium because it's
right,
going over and over and over. And that's the thing they'll put their money into. And because it's big companies putting their money into it, that's the thing that we'll be swamped with. We will hear that over and
right,
over again. But if you go onto the internet, you go onto even YouTube, any of the platforms where you can hear music, people are doing, even TikTok, all of them, people are putting up really good music that doesn't get picked up on. It's not disposable enough, that's the word. And
mm,
the kind of people who write this disposable music aren't real lyricists. It's somebody who writes it in their bedroom. This would
right.
sound good, la 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 la, and that's
Yeah.
it.
I used to love the words to the songs back in the day, you know? And now it's just like one line and on and on and on. I can't really take the new music.
Yeah, as I said, there are some good ones. I think you just have to rummage through, swim through the debris and the rubbish and to get to the ones that are there. And there's
The real stuff.
still artists like myself just released a single called All That Glitters Might Not Be Gold. It's about sort of taking things at face value because sometimes something that seems real it isn't real. It sounds a bit like the vibe of Sounds of Blackness, so I've written it in that kind of vibe, and it's done
Danceable.
pretty well because it has got lyrics, but because I've harkened back to old style of
Right.
music, how people, the things people played. But with that, a certain audience will buy it. So a younger person won't necessarily buy it. An
Right.
older person who is reminded, like you would be, of how it used to be.
Right.
People come up to me and go, oh, that's so reminiscent of, and that was the
Mhm.
idea. But it's hard for somebody like me to put out new material and
Right.
to attract a younger audience because
Right.
they know what they like. They've been fed, spoon fed the one
Right.
liners. And that's the way.
Now, when did you release the disc, the single?
Second week in January, it was released. And that's done. It's been played by sort of all the local radio stations. And it went in on all the local. In fact, the UK soul chart, it actually got in at 5. So that's pretty good. And it's not a major record company either. So that's
Right.
pretty good.
So you've been making music for decades. What's the secret to staying relevant and keeping your voice strong after all these years?
Just looking after you and understanding what your forte is. Because I think many singers make terrible mistakes. They start off in a certain range. As you get older, your range drops, your voice gets deeper. Because if you listen to any interview I did when I was younger, my voice is up here. And as you get older, and it's still in a higher range, but as you get older, that all drops. And people who then want to go on the road and they're trying to do the songs in the original keys, even Gladys doesn't do that. She
Right.
sounds fabulous. There are a few who aren't as sensible as somebody like Gladys, who don't understand. Listen, you sound terrible now. And it's not that you can't sing.
Right.
It's that you're refusing to accept that maybe I have to now find a different way to deliver
Make
this
some
tune.
adjustments.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you ever think about retiring?
No.
You
I think
want me to
one
ask
day
you
I
that question
will.
again?
Well, one day I will have to. I won't have a choice. But for now, I'm still enjoying it. It's all I know. I mean, I did for a short while in my young years do accountancy, which has
Oh,
stood me in
wow.
good stead. My dad was pretty disappointed that I didn't after he had intentions of me going to university. After I got in to do psychology, I decided I want to do music. So I could always go and be a mature student and pick up where I left off, maybe. Who knows?
So the first time I asked you about retiring, do you remember what you said to me?
I think I said I can't even afford to retire.
No, you said this is England.
Yes, and
That
that's
was
it.
funny.
In England, they've just moved the retirement age. They're moving it again to 67.
Oh, wow.
And I expect by the time this government's done, it'll probably be 70. Every single time it's moving. It used to be 60, then 65,
Right.
then 66. Now it's going to be 67. So as a
I think I
musician,
remember a time when 55 and they were asking you when you were leaving.
not now. And people are going to have to work until they drop. Oh, honestly.
So where else are you performing this year? And do you have any plans to tour the US?
Not really. For personal reasons, I feel the US, for me, isn't the place I want to tour right now. So much going on. Musicians have to deal with a lot when we're touring. When we had an agreement with Europe, for speaking as a British person, it was easier to perform all over Europe. Now we don't have an agreement, that's more difficult. And it's getting difficult even to travel in places like the US because the paperwork, sorting out the visa is very expensive. I need to kind of see how things are panning out,
Yeah.
and
No,
things settle down.
I hear you. A lot of us got our heads down waiting for the next shoe to drop.
Yeah, I think the whole world is like that at the moment.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy right now. So you, like me, are in your third quarter.
Yes.
Do you have any special plans for your fourth quarter, or you don't necessarily want to plan that
Well,
far
it's
ahead?
sort of 3 years and a bit away. So I have no way, because I play it every day. My husband and I were born in the same year. We didn't really our 60th, even though we sort of did a little, went to dinner and had a celebration. It's like we didn't really do a big celebration of it.
Right.
I suppose 70 is going to be that will be a huge one. So I'll see,
Yeah. But no long-term plans.
Not really, no.
Okay. So looking back, what are the moments in your career that you're most proud of?
Singing with the Rhythm Kings. We did Glastonbury as the Rhythm Kings.
Ooh.
And me being featured for the first time to an audience that had heard me on various commercials, various films, various records, and didn't know anything about me. And suddenly people were beginning to hear me. So I think that period in my life is a proud moment, even more proud than having a hit, which I can proudly say I have, and that was a great moment. But the live thing, there's something special about when you are stood on the stage and you look down, and I can see why older, more famous people like Elton and that is only just retiring. The lure of being on that stage, you look down into the crowd and you see all these people, you can't even recognize their faces. They're coming to hear what you do. For me, that was a moment. I could remember the first time I Put a Spell on You, and I think I did it in Germany. I did it for a TV program, and it was absolutely packed. And because people obviously were interested in Bill and the whole band, and when I went to do that song, after I sang, there was silence, and in the studio, a whole standing ovation. that for me was the proudest moment of my life. I was being recognized for me.
Mhm.
That was me. That was a really proud moment. And it made everything else worthwhile. I understand why the stage is so important to people and why people don't give up even when they're crotchety and old and can hardly. I understand why they don't. Because it's
Right,
like a drug.
because and people will still come out based on the body of work that they've done before.
Yes.
So, just admiration for prior work
Yes.
makes you still come and see some of these singers and songwriters that they're phenomenal, even though they may not be what they
Definitely.
used to be.
I think
Um,
a loyal fan base will understand that, because the thing about a loyal fan base, more mature people, they've grown with that
right,
artist. They've got older with that artist. And when they're listening, even though it's not as brilliant, in
right.
their minds, they're still remembering when it was and what was happening to them
Yeah,
when
and
they
there's
first heard
nostalgia.
that song. Yeah. You will always have that. As a famous performer who has a repertoire, people like Tom Jones and Shirley Bassey, who still, my God, she is wonderful. She still goes out there and belts it out, and you think, where is this coming from? It looks spectacular. That's the other thing. She still makes an effort. She's never put away the spangly dress and having one leg out, and she's still going there. And you see people are in awe of her still.
Right. Yeah. Well, one person I would love to see is Randy Crawford, but I think she retired a few years ago.
Oh, has
And
she?
I think so. And I think they said she wasn't coming back. So,
Oh, there might be a reason. I mean,
yeah, she's, well, for medical reasons, but
yeah, yeah.
I love Randy. Have you ever thought about writing a book?
So many people, because I actually do on my Facebook page. I have on my page, sometimes I write, it's almost like doing a podcast really on my page. I really was writing it for myself, really, to start with. Just my observations about life as a singer, my relationship with my dad, who died last year and who was really influential. He influenced a lot of my opinions and who I am. And so I would write about things, or if we had a disagreement about a political thing, and I would talk about it. His sayings, because he had a lot of sayings and a lot of things that he would be really absolutely right about, that we would knock heads about, because when you're younger, you think you know better.
Right.
And actually, many times now that I'm older, I quote him and I think, my God, I could remember when I told him, don't be silly, Dad,
Yeah.
And now I'm quoting the same things. So I write about those things. And people are always coming on and saying, why don't you write a book? Because we love the way you write. We love the way that we feel included in your life. When you're talking, we feel like you're talking to us individually. And I think maybe it would lose its luster if I was then doing it because I had to. So maybe one day when I'm retired and I
And
can't
have the
get any.
time, the luxury to sit down and write.
Yeah, one day I'll sit down and write some of my adventures, but rather than my adventures, because my adventures, a lot of singers have the kind of adventures I had, even though I've been very fortunate to work with a body of people. But the thing I would probably write about would be my observations about human beings
Right.
over the world where I've travelled, how we are all the same. We do things maybe slightly different, but it's to the same ends, and we
Right.
don't realize it. We think because we're doing something differently that it's for a different purpose, and then you think about it, no, it's for the same purpose. You're just doing it,
Right.
in a different way from me. So my observations over the years, from going to Japan, from all over America, all over Europe, all over Great Britain, seeing how people are as human beings, that's really what I would like
To
to
write
write
about.
about, because I'm a people's person. I love people, and that's how I make this. How we became sort of friends. That's how myself and Yinka, who became friends, because my eye contact with them So I can sense a vibe, and I
Yeah.
love the
Someone is
vibe.
positive.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I draw from that positivity. I can
Right.
look into an audience and there'll be people who I'll see and I'll think, okay, and there'll be someone, might just be the one person that our eyes meet, and I can see you get me, you understand me. And we've
Right.
never spoken, but I can see it. And often after a performance, I'll be talking to them, and I'll know that I was right, that that person understands and gets me. It kind of reinforces my belief that communication, no matter where we come from, because it's people from all over the world that I meet, communication is really key to
Right.
all kinds of things, wars, anything that you could imagine that's wrong with this world. It's nothing
Mm.
that good communication can't ease and solve. But we
Yeah.
just don't communicate. And sometimes we don't want to, but
Yeah.
ideally
Well,
want to.
we need a lot of communication in the United States right now. So,
But again, if you don't want to, and
right.
then nothing will happen, or
Right.
what will happen is what you want to happen. Because if you want meaningful communication, you will find out, and you will find a way of
Find it.
finding out what
Right.
the people really, really want. But if you have your own itinerary
Agenda.
and your own agenda, then you won't want to know what others are thinking.
You're not open to change.
You're not open to change, and you don't want a conversation.
Right.
So for me, it's about having conversations with those who really do want a conversation. There are millions out there. I feel sorry for people in the United States, because if you were looking at just the news, you would think that everybody in the United States is thinking the same, but they're
Right.
not.
No.
There are many people who want a conversation. There are many people who are kind. There are many people who,
Good people.
yeah, good people,
Yeah.
good people who want what is right. So I think if you bear that in mind and you don't look at everybody as people that come from here are like this, black people are like that, white people are, that's not true.
Right.
We're individuals with our own minds, and we all think differently. And there's good and bad in every single one of us. Yeah, so you hear me preaching, sorry.
Well, I know how much you loved your daddy, and I can tell that the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. Your dad was a classic West Indian, very curious, very interested in learning about things and the politics. And I will add that dad passed at 93, if I'm
Yeah.
correct. So he really had a long stretch there. And I'm sure his daughter will too. Yeah.
I hope so. I feel I have a lot to give, a lot more to give, but
Right.
also, like he would always say, you're never too old to learn something new. He was a bit stubborn with some things, but I have photos of my dad. When one of the times when, in fact, one of the last times when we took him to that place at Christmas, and we're all at the table, including my dad, and we're taking phone calls like, oh, and taking pictures. And my dad's got his phone out as well, and he's going, okay. And because he was well up on his technology as
Oh,
well,
what was going on?
At
Yeah.
93, you would think, good grief, really? He's at the
No,
table as well,
he
head
was
down into the
independent
phone.
for a long time, right until that last year.
Oh, yeah,
So,
yeah.
and I remember you talking about how stubborn he was. He wasn't going to come and live with someone else. He wanted to stay in his own house,
Stay in his own, and he did.
and good for him.
And he did.
Yeah.
We had to, my husband and I, we kind of moved in with him. He didn't want to be in any hospital. When he knew, okay, there's nothing more that can be done now, it
Hmm.
was right. We had a party for his birthday. He said, ring everybody up, tell them they've got to come. We'll have a party. He had a drink. With the medication and everything that he was taking, he said, well, what harm can it do now? As far as I'm concerned, the merrier I feel, the better. So he was a character, yeah.
So, Beverly, your career has been nothing short of extraordinary, and your energy is truly contagious. As we close, what message would you like to share with women over 50 who still have big dreams but may feel that time is working against them? What's your secret to stay passionate and vibrant?
Passionate. Look after yourself, because as much as we like to say, take me as I am, I'm older, and that doesn't wash. I'm sorry. I'm about to burst a bubble. Look after yourself. When you're younger, I used to do this with my hair because I have really long hair, but I keep it in braids because it's easier to deal with. And I like this look. But I would do this, comb out my hair, it'd be ready, no makeup. I looked fabulous. I was as thin as a rake, looked fabulous. But as you get older, I'm afraid you have to do a bit more. And saying, well, I'm embracing getting old, well, that doesn't wash with me. I embrace it, but at the same, because I'm not afraid of it, but I want to look my best all the time. And my advice is look your best. It might take a bit longer, whereas you can't just go in the mirror and take your time. If it takes an hour, it doesn't matter.
When you look good, you feel good.
You look, and that is it, Nadu. When you look good, you feel good. When you put something on, you don't need somebody to say you look good. You can look in the mirror and go, I look good.
Right.
And that is the secret. If you feel good, actually, that energy rubs off. People don't, look at me and start saying, oh, you're over 60. They don't. Sometimes I went to a funeral, sadly, the other day, and all the guys that I knew, musicians who were younger than me in their 50s even, one by one, in this place, there were about 500 people. And people that I've known for years, and some I hadn't seen for years. And the only thing they could talk about was, have you got a picture in the attic? Because you know the story of the picture in the attic where he's got a picture in the attic and it's Dorian Gray and his old self.
Right.
And as long as the picture is up in the attic with the old,
he never gets old.
He never gets old. And they keep saying to me, but you look exactly the same. And it's not that I look exactly the same. It's that I look after myself in exactly the same way that I always did. Because I don't feel that I want to be pushing in people's face all the time, oh, well, I'm this, oh, poor me, I'm older. I feel like you have to be strong and say, let me embrace this, but let me embrace the right things.
Embrace the positive.
Embrace the positive.
Right.
And
you don't have to embrace frailty and,
Look at you. I saw you at your party and thought, this is someone that's embracing the positive. Someone that's not saying, oh, look at me. I'm frail. I'm at death's door, and not wearing it like a badge of honor. Because it isn't.
Yeah.
So that's my secret, if it's a secret.
Well, it's been wonderful having you, Beverly, and I'm glad we were able to catch up and do this podcast.
Me too, at last.
I really, really, really appreciate it. And we'll talk soon.
We'll talk soon.
Best of luck. Have a great year. I know your season is starting shortly.
Yes, and I've got some blues shows in Italy in June and lots of exciting things that are coming up. So I'm looking forward to this year. So
where can my audience check out your schedule and your website and everything and learn more about you? If they use, because I do tend to use Instagram and Facebook a lot. I don't tend to use the other platforms because they're not my kind of platform. So I stick to the platforms, and also because the kind of audience that I attract, this is where they go. So look me up at Facebook, Instagram, or look me up www.beverleyskeete.com. You can see whatever I'm doing, or there'll always be something where you're going to be.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Beverly. Nice seeing you.
Nice to see you. And you take care. Looking beautiful, may I say.
Oh, thank you. Having Beverly here has been such a treat. She's an inspiration, not just as a musician, but as a woman who has embraced every stage of life with passion, energy, and grace. Thank you for sharing your incredible journey with us, Beverly. For those who want to follow Beverly's music and upcoming performances, you can visit her website at 606club.co.uk or reach out via email at info@beverleyskeete.com. If you loved this conversation, please subscribe to Wellness and Wisdom with Dr. Nadu Tuakli and share this episode with your friends And don't forget, if you have high blood pressure, take your medication. Stay well, stay wise, and keep rocking. Thank you, Beverley, and thank you for listening.